A motion, or and are there any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I move we adopt the minutes as presented.
Second?
Second.
No? Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes passed.
Do we need
Just-
to have two motions, one for the hearing and one for the meeting minutes?
Not necessarily.
No, not
As
necessarily.
long as you intended to do it together.
Okay.
Just as a reminder, we are under the rules of procedure that was given to everybody, and it is a select board meeting, not a public hearing. The warrants were signed by the select board and approved.
But I don't have them to present yet because not everybody signed them, so I'll present the warrants for.
Well, these are the warrants that I signed this morning?
You signed
Oh,
them.
so-
And
so we
three
did
people have
approve
signed it, but I haven't presented them, so I'll present them at the next meeting.
Okay, so they have been signed though?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
The
okay.
three people have signed them.
Okay, all right, so this warrants are signed, we'll have a presentation at the
Next
next regular meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's welcome Sarah and Adam. They're gonna give us a report today. So, would you like to come up front here? How would you like to do this, or you perfectly,
What's the common practice?
either way, everybody does something different, so. We have a chair here, you're welcome to come up front or whatever,
See the most people here, this is great, thank you.
okay? This is a small group, so it's
Yeah,
not a problem.
absolutely. So thank you for having us. My name's Adam Grinold. I'm the Executive Director at the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. Many of you may have heard of either BDCC or SEVIDS. Those two are often intermixed. They are two different organizations. The Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation is one of 12 RDCs, Regional Development Corporations in the state of Vermont, loosely defined by county. So we serve as the economic development organization for the Wyndham region. And then SEVIDS is a standalone organization with its own board, its own budget, but it has no staff. So SEVIDS contracts with the BDCC to implement its mission. So we all walk around with BDCC cards, but many of us are working on SEVIDS strategies. So the SEVIDS board develops a long-term strategic planning for the Wyndham region, and then they set yearly priorities for implementing that, and they task the BDCC with doing that. So a lot of what we do is in that vein with SEVIDS, and one of the things that we've really been focused on in the past several years is in career awareness and workforce development. You can't meet with an employer where they don't tell you they need to find more workers, more people. And what we're really interested in is specifically aligning our school system to jobs that are good jobs, they're growing jobs, they have growing opportunity, they're high wage jobs. So we know that our students leave our school systems and 40% do not go on to college or some credentialing opportunity. So what we really want to do is make sure they're aware of those good jobs that are in the region. And Sarah will sort of hold up a map. This is called the P3 program. And we're really excited. We spent a couple of years raising funds from municipalities, from businesses, from foundations to be able to hire a licensed educator who's working for our organization, but in all 4 Wyndham County high schools. And Christy Beatty is that individual, and she is working with the principals, the superintendents, the guidance counselors, the teachers, and really built what is an amazing program that is connecting these students with career opportunities. So they've been on field trips all October is manufacturing month, so focusing on manufacturers, going out and learning that the old manufacturing plant that the parents might have feared was shooting shards of metal and oily and dirty work is now really a computer-run CNC high-tech operation that also has HR, bookkeeping, a lot of different opportunities within that building. And aligning the students early enough in their career in school to make sure that they make the right decisions to take that extra math class that's going to be required to be able to operate the CNC. So that's one of the programs that we're really focused on. In addition to that, we've got some entrepreneurial work. So we have a small business micro lending program. If anyone in the region needs access to those funds. And then of particular note, and I've got it in our packet here, we also have a community facilities program. So this is a USDA-funded program that is for nonprofits and municipalities to access low-interest loans from the USDA. So we can help you if there's a project that you're trying to just finish and get over the last hurdle, or you needed perhaps a feasibility study. We've got the resources to put someone to assist that municipality or nonprofit to fund part of that very small project, very small piece of that, so that you can get it to that loan application with the USDA. USDA does loans out to 35 years at a low interest rate for these projects. So this is a great municipal and nonprofit program. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah for a few minutes.
So just to note some of the things Adam was talking about in the folders that you have, the Micro Entrepreneurial Loan Program is this other brochure that has the blue on top. And then the P3 program, the sheet that you have in there is actually, this is the teacher guide that goes with that placemat. So just that gives you some more information. We also have our annual report in there. Before I dig in, my name is Sarah. I run the internship program. So we run a paid internship program, and I essentially play the matchmaker between Wyndham region employers and college students. I do a lot of other things kind of around recruitment, like running the young professionals group, participating in some statewide programs around recruiting new people to the area, and one of the things, we had an intern this summer actually put together a data report, and I have a few extra ones that I can leave if people want to take them for each town in our region, and the select board has them up there. And the one thing, I mean, there's lots of good stuff in here, but one thing I like noting is the worker flow, which is the green arrows and circles. And essentially what it's saying is there are 130 people that come into Grafton to work here, but there are 240 people that leave Grafton to work here. And I really like pointing this out since we are a regional organization. This is really important to us. So a lot of towns want to know, like, what have we done for Grafton, which is obviously very important, but it's also important to note that there are a lot of people that live here that work elsewhere. And so a lot of our scope is thinking regionally about that. How do we help the residents that live here, but they might not actually work here. So there's a lot of other good data in that. I'm going to leave these if people want to take them as well. Another program that I was running and will run again come the 2020 is the Southern Vermont Economy Project. So this was funded and will continue to be funded by the USDA. And it's around capacity building for nonprofits, organizations, municipalities around economic development and workforce development. And so one of the things that came out of the first round of this project are these Knowledge Bites webinars. So these are short 30-minute webinars that we have hosted live and then recorded. And you can see there's over 30, I believe, different topics that you can access that we've done in the past, and this is a part of the program that we will continue to do come January 2020. So just for instance, we had Kevin Stapleton from the Department of Labor talking about understanding labor market information. We had the community access TV stations come talk about sort of what they do and what they can provide to communities. We had the Building Communities Grant Program. So it's talking essentially about resources, programs, funding around economic and workforce development. So it's a very small bit of information, but we provide the contact for that, the point person.
And anyone here can access it?
Oh,
online?
yep, it's right online. It's
Brattleboro,
right, yep,
Vermont.com.
exactly, yeah. Even if you just search Knowledge Bites, yeah, it should come up. Lastly, but not least, Adam had mentioned SEVEDS that does the long-term strategic planning and for the region around economic development. And we just completed the SEDS process, which stands for the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. It's kind of like a town plan, but for 27 towns and for the economy, if you want to think about it that way. And it's federally prescribed, and the Windham County had one. We completed that in 2014. It's a 5-year plan. And so essentially the federal government said, hey, you should do another one since your 5 years are up, but can you do it with Bennington County? So we've been partnering a lot with Bennington County on a lot of programs, and this is one of those things that we have partnered with them on, is this comprehensive economic development strategy. And again, there's a sheet in there that sort of outlines the value statement, the goals, objectives, priority actions. And this was done with, I believe, at least 15 public input sessions. This wasn't just like a small group of us that got together and thought up these things. We had a very, it's a very prescribed process as far as getting the public involved, what they want to see in their community, and what they want to see in the region's economy. I think that's it. There's a lot of other stuff in your folder, and we made the mistake to the first select board trying to go through everything and realized that, you know, we got some glazed eyes, we lost people halfway through, so please look at, there's more information in there. We just wanted to touch on those points, and we'd be happy to answer questions.
The 130 Vermonters that come to Grafton for employment, do you have a breakdown?
We were actually just talking about that before the meeting started. We don't meet from where they're coming from.
Where they're employed in Grafton?
They suppress that data.
Why?
The Fed, because it's too small of a data set for the state, so it's not to the specific employer.
So you don't know if they're part-time or full-time jobs?
Correct.
But then these numbers really don't do anything for Grafton.
It's a snapshot of just showing that people come into work and people leave to work. For Grafton, it's not a significant change, whereas if you're in a town for Rockingham, the numbers are going to be much more significant people coming in. But then, surprisingly, a lot of people leave Rockingham, perhaps go to New Hampshire, go north. So it just helps set the understanding that people are leaving, but people are coming.
Yeah, but when you say 130 people come to Grafton to be employed, that goes, wow, that's amazing for a community of 650 where 40% are second homeowners. But you don't have a breakdown.
We don't, no, I'm sorry.
Well, then it's misleading what you're feeding us.
That's not the intent.
Well, I know, but it's not a true, I mean, any economics person will take a look at this and they say, it just doesn't do anything. A person can come into Grafton and work at the inn for 5 hours a day, or 5 hours for one day. Or just on Burger and Brew night, when they need a lot of people to do wait staffing.
Agreed. And this is federal data that the state collects.
Yeah.
And it's just the way the federal and state government collects that data.
Okay. Now, economic development, what do you guys, I had this question years and years ago and I got no answer at a town meeting, and I had the same follow-up question 3 years later. Seems like the state doesn't have an economic development plan to bring industry into the state.
They too have what's called the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for the state. So there is a plan that does highlight high wage in certain sectors that they want to focus on attraction. But I would agree that it's the relocation of industry to Vermont has not borne a lot of fruit.
Yeah, that's pretty sad, isn't it? And that's why people are leaving. Kids are leaving. Not just kids that graduate, but even adults.
It is. So one of the things that we focus on for our region is our assets. So what do we have? How can we grow those assets? So in the Windham region, we've seen an increase in manufacturing jobs and an increase in manufacturing wages, whereas the rest of the state has seen a decrease in jobs and a decrease in wages. And we attribute some of that to the focus on growth. So the recent Chroma project that expanded Chroma's operations, Whitney Blake is expanding their operations, and Brattleboro GS Precision. So those jobs are good jobs. They're high opportunity jobs. You know, we have such an aging workforce. There's a lot of people who are middle management who are starting to age out of those jobs. So if you're a 28-year-old person, you want to get into a career with fast, rapid growth, it's a real opportunity. So what we really want to focus on is our assets. Another asset in the region is the value-added food production. So Grafton Village Cheese, they are a company that we want to continue to support, have supported in the past. And then we have a lot of the other food manufacturers in the region that are a real growth. So we lean in towards those areas where what we consider our assets.
Yeah, getting back to my second question, when I asked the same question like 2 or 3 years later, the answer from our state representative was, well, we created 1,000 agricultural jobs in the last 10 years. I mean, those aren't real jobs. I mean, a good chunk of those jobs are seasonal. I mean, that's the answer I got, and our state representative was very, very proud of that. We created 1,000 jobs in the agricultural sector in the last 10 years.
And most of those are handled by illegal immigrants.
That's right, there was something about that Sunday, Channel 3.
Al?
Just a comment to Peter's thought process on the 130 and 240. Although it doesn't give the specifics that you're looking for, I remember looking at a chart like this that was probably done in the mid-70s into the 80s maybe. At that point in time, there was more people coming to Grafton for work than leaving Grafton for work. So it doesn't give the specifics, but it certainly gives the trend. Yeah.
I have kind of a follow-up question, is that since the state of Vermont doesn't really recognize Vermont south of Rutland, and they have a policy that really doesn't promote jobs, what do you see as you're trying to develop something here in the south, but you're getting no help from the state? So what do you see as a result here? Because it's not working. I mean, you might be working, but the state's not working.
It is, everyone is trying to do more with less, and state government certainly is in that same position. Over the last few years, the state has really focused, and probably saw a lot of press, where we're trying to bring remote workers to the region. If you move to Vermont, you get $10,000. So that received a lot of national publicity. This year, what they're trying to do is promote moving to Vermont and getting paid to do so for people who work for Vermont employers. So it's a little twist on that. People sometimes push back and say, well, I already live here. You're going to pay me to stay here? And so, that's a very valid point. But then we also have to remember, in Vermont, we are spending around $60 million a year, mostly of federal dollars, to support our existing workforce. So there are considerable dollars spent for the workforce that's here. We live by the motto, every job counts. So if we get an email from someone that says, hey, I'm thinking of moving to the region, Sarah probably fields a few a week of these, and then the various staff do as well. We stop what we're doing, we respond to the person, we engage with them, and we really try to make connections in the area, because truly every job does count. Could the state do more? Sure. Do the departments and agencies that are involved in this want to do more? Yes. But they're doing, I think, as well as they can with the resources they're given. There's a lot of good people trying to do that.
Adam, what did you say was it $60 million was spent on?
Yeah, on workforce. So this gets way into the weeds quickly, but it's WIOA. So it's a Workforce Investment Act. It's federal dollars that come to the state that are really spread across the various budgets and agencies and departments. But if your WIOA eligible funds can go towards retraining. If you're recently incarcerated, you could get retraining. If you're recovering from drug abuse, you can get training dollars. If you're a high school student, you can get training, apprenticeship dollars, anything that really has with training and workforce development.
Thank you.
Do you have any numbers on how many people have taken advantage of the program of moving to Vermont and working at home?
Not that I'd want to be quoted on, but I think right now it's around 100-ish. And you know, there's if you go to thinkvermont.com is the state website. There's a lot of information, some of the details that will
Thank you.
fill that in. We know in our region, we have 3 families that I know of that have moved here and bought homes as a result of that promotion and connecting largely with our shop about that.
Any other questions?
I've been reading a lot that you folks have got, you know, networking get-togethers like almost monthly and workshops and that. You track the people that come to network?
Yes.
I mean, they do sign in, you know,
Yeah.
leave their email
Yeah.
and phone number. Do you track them like, how did it go? Are you finding employment? You know, is it south in Massachusetts or east in New Hampshire or?
I think we track them in a good way. And Sarah does most of this, so I'll let her speak to the specifics. But we do hope they engage with our email list, our distribution list, and become aware of what's happening in the region. Just better citizens if they're new, welcoming them to the region, or if they're trying to support others who are moving to the region, especially the YP program.
Yeah, so I think we do a lot of networking in different capacities and for different reasons. So I'd say a lot of the networking that you probably see is through the Young Professionals group. And we have, at this point, over 100 members in our group. And we have, you know, through that sort of membership form, we have a bunch of information about them, you know, where they work, you know, what their position is, how long they've been there, you know, contact information, all that type of stuff. And so that's for people 20-something to 40-something. But we also do networking around new hires for our employers in the region. So, you know, every quarter or so, we reach out to our employers and say, hey, anyone that you've hired new in the past 2 years, like invite them to meet other new people, to meet other community members that have been here a while, to really start making those connections. And then we also, as you've mentioned, do a ton of different types of workshops. And we're always collecting at least name and email, if not a lot more information.
So where's the breakdown on these professionals? These 100 professionals, you used the term that are in your group.
Mm-hmm. Breakdown in what way?
Well, employment. I mean, are they advertising people? Are they reporters, mechanics?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, but I do have it all, you know, back at work on my computer. I'd be happy to sort of condense that information and get it back to you.
One of the things that we're really trying to focus on is a young professional can, for some people they're like, well, I'm not young. And some people are, well, I'm not a professional. There's no IDing at the door. And professional really is open. It is for all people who want to network and grow as an individual or in their profession.
Thank you.
I have one further question. The planning commission of most towns, one of their jobs is to try to promote growth. Do you work with planning commissions from towns who bring some businesses or some development to their town, or do you not work with that?
We do. So the sort of structure of planning commissions is that they work more closely with Wyndham Regional Commission, which is our sister entity. So the Agency of Commerce and Community Development houses the two community development and economic development. So the RDCs are with the economic development, and the RPCs are with the community development. But the Wyndham Regional Commission and the BDCC work on a weekly basis. We're working together and work with communities in that regard.
Any other questions? Well, thank you for
having us.
informing us about this program. It sounds great. I wish maybe you should work with the state. Maybe that you do better than they are.
In your packet also, there is a letter.
I think I printed that one.
So I'll leave this with you. So part of what we do is ask communities for funding for this. This past year, we received 84% of Wyndham County residents supported our funding request at their municipal funding. So we do this a variety of ways. Various communities handle it differently. Petitioning to be an article within the budget at town meeting. So there's a lot of different ways that we see the different municipalities handle that. And we are asking people to include us in the budget and not ask us to petition. But we're, of course, always happy to still present at town meeting to speak to the question.
Well, this is very timely because we're going to start working on our budget within the next couple of weeks, so.
Nice.
We certainly will take this, one of the items.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Got one more question. On this funding, I knew there had to be a catch here. Then I've asked this question before. How is Grafton benefiting? I mean, very rarely in your emails about your networking and everything else and what you're doing, it's all Brattleboro, it's all Brattleboro, it's Wilmington, it's Brattleboro, it's Brattleboro. You never hear anything up here, you know, Newfane, Townsend, Grafton, Bellows Falls. You never hear anything about us. The only time you come here is when you're looking for money.
Well, so we do a lot of things outside of Brattleboro, and I will acknowledge that it's in our name. So it's, we lead with that, and that may not be the best choice of names. But we are a regional organization, and we really do spend a lot of time across the region. Specifically in Grafton, we have an annual YP event here for certain. We do work closely with Grafton Village Cheese in a variety of capacities and have for several years. We certainly do a lot in Rockingham and Bellows Falls. So we really do try to touch the corners, but we do go where the jobs are primarily for the region. So we do spend a significant time there. I think in regards to the ask for funding and what do we do specifically for Grafton, it really is that regional connection, that no one town can do this. Nobody's coming to save Grafton or Newfane or Wilmington or Dover. Each town has to come up with this themselves and find out what their priorities are, what they want to achieve, and ask themselves, can they do it alone? And if they can't do it alone, we hope that we're filling a role there.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Danny, you have a highway report for us.
So it's still, we're starting to blow leaves, do some more grading in between rainstorms and windstorms. And we've got 2 more culvert crossings that hopefully get done before winter. And just start getting equipment ready for the winter.
Any comments for Danny?
I have a couple.
Sure.
The snowstorm power outage that we had in last fall, actually it was in the Catskills, so I guess it wasn't quite fall, but that heavy snow, we had power out for 5 days. There was quite a bit of concern by some people that we hadn't done enough and hadn't followed the plan. You and I wound up going and talking to Green Mountain Power after that. I was curious, this last power outage, was there much interaction between the highway crew and Green Mountain Power. Is there anything there that indicated our visit was worthwhile?
Well, you know, there's a new person running that now.
I do.
But, they came in after hours pretty much, and there's only really one tree that blocked the road. And they came in later on, 6 o'clock or something that night, and opened it.
Yeah, well, the one that, by my house, I think it was
Right.
about 12:30, 1
But
o'clock.
they couldn't get
were
through
working there.
underneath it.
Right, right.
Not really, I mean, they didn't
It
have,
wasn't a big enough storm.
Yeah.
Right,
right,
yeah.
most of our trees then didn't involve any, lines. I think there's like maybe 3 or 4 trees that involved power lines. Only 2 of them involved power lines and the road.
Yep.
Bill worked with Green Mountain, I think.
Bill called them all in.
I called them all in, and no, it's pretty worthless. I didn't dare call the emergency number that they gave us at the EMD meetings, because it wasn't that big an event.
Well, that's.
But I'm still frustrated. I mean, I talked to the driver when he got to Allen. I followed him to Allen's because he came by the office right at 4:30 when I was leaving, 4:35. I followed him up there, and he had no clue. He wasn't from there. He was from Williston, and he had no clue what was going on, and didn't know who was doing anything. He didn't know if they'd been to Right Orchard Road. He didn't know anything. Well, they got radios in their car. I mean, in their truck. Don't tell me you don't know what's going on around you. If they don't know what's going on around you, then Green Mountain's got more troubles than I thought. Because you should be listening to what's going on. So anyway, they did clean that up there, but no one reached out, and they didn't want to talk to anybody. So I'm not happy with it, but I know that, on the other hand, I know they had a big job to do, but they got here late in the day. We were not the worst area. The worst area was to our west, and that by the time they got here, they're probably pretty tired and worn out. But on the other hand, just give us someone to talk to. I don't care if he lives in the Northeast Kingdom. Have him call me and find out what we need and tell me when they're gonna be here. That's all we've asked of them. And we've asked of those guys, the fancy dance people that showed up at our EM meeting, all from the headquarters. They promised all this stuff. They didn't give us anything. So, no, when we go back to the MD meeting, and I talk about it again, it's terrible. It's just awful. If they're gonna respond to our community, then let us know what is going on.
If that's a concern, you have to let us know.
It's a simple phone call. Then we can let you know, but we can't let anybody know what's going on.
In the past, the app has been very useful, but for this outage, it was useless. They did not respond or give any estimates or updates throughout the entire outage.
You know, I asked 3 times. I called in 7 times. The last 3 times, I called in for different incidents, 7 different incidents. The last 3 times I said, can you tell your call center to call me? I told them who it was, have them call me. 3 times I asked, I didn't get one response. Now, do I have the number for the call center? Yeah. Am I gonna use it anytime at all? No. I mean, if we were dying, yeah, I'd call them. But it just disappointed me, that's all.
Danny, have you met with the new
I
Allen
talked to
National
him.
Replacement?
I
Allen
talked to
National
him one
Replacement?
day when he was coming through town, but.
So you met him face to face?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we were told there in Middletown that they're gonna, mid-morning Friday, I get to work and his messages here. And they say, oh, well, we got power back. So we went out and the trees all out of the road. And then I know one other person on Middletown called in late on Thursday. And they said, oh, this is the first report we've had of a power outage on this road. And it's like,
Yeah,
that's not
common.
quite accurate,
wait a
because they
minute.
got smart meters too that tells them, so.
Wait a minute, is that what they told Dick DeRocher? Is that why?
We're trying to say names, Bill.
Well, is that, no, okay, but wait a minute. But Dick DeRocher complained that no one had called it in.
No,
I called that in at 9 o'clock in the
I
morning.
got a call from, right before
It wasn't from
the
me.
hearing, I got a call from Valerie asking when the power's gonna go back, and I said, I have no idea, and she said, well, it hasn't been called in yet. I said, why? What do you mean? I said, I know, personally, I saw it myself. I went down, Bill called it in, Alan and I put the road closed signs down. Well, Dick DeRocha called and they told him they didn't even know what was going on. So I said to Valerie, listen, believe me, trust me, when they're gonna come, I can't tell you, but Green Mountain Power knows about it and they're on their way at some point. So, I mean, it was called in, I know it was called in, and besides that, they know when the power's out anyway. So, I don't know what's going on with Green Mountain or whatever.
Wow, I'm kinda sorry I asked.
Let me see this, I looked at the map around 10 o'clock in the morning, Dick DeRocher's house was on that map.
Yeah, I know.
So if that operator told him it wasn't called in, then she's just lying to him.
Exactly, because I saw the same map, and it showed the outages of where they were, so, anyway.
No, it was awful.
I got two more questions,
Go ahead.
maybe they're better. Okay. Any update on the excavator?
1 month out
1 month
is what I
out.
was told. Yeah. And that was of last week, so 3 to 4 weeks out.
The other thing was, we did that big culvert on Route 35. Wasn't that supposed to have some grouting?
Yes. Yeah.
Has that completed?
The town crew we did what we could, but we didn't do the overhead stuff. Did Nathaniel ever get back to you on that?
I was gonna ask him this morning, but I didn't have enough information to ask him, so I decided I wasn't gonna ask him. But because I knew you guys had done part of it, and I thought he told me he was gonna talk to you, so he has not?
Nope.
Okay, I'll talk to him.
Maybe find a look for somebody else.
Yeah.
I did what I felt was the more important part, which is
The
like
lower part.
3/4 of the pipe up. Just I'm not a mason and I can't get cement to stick over my head.
Yeah.
We did the lower part where you have moisture flow of water, but sometime the top portion should be done.
When that was arranged, was there kind of a date that was supposed to be done by?
Well, we started last year trying to get it done,
Well,
so it's been almost a year.
Well, we told him this season, and he kept promising he'd do it.
should we continue to wait, or should we look in a different
Well,
direction?
I think someone needs to contact Daniel and see what he's gonna do.
I'll talk to Nathaniel. He's given us his employment information except for his insurance, right? We don't have his.
I have to look.
Well, I think we needed his insurance policy, but that's just a phone call. But other than that, we've gotten his information, and he signed off the liability because he's a owner,
Right.
doer. And so that, all that has been done, all the paperwork has been done that I know of, except for the insurance, maybe.
Just need to do the work.
Just need to.
We'll put it on the, I'll have a note, and Bill and I'll follow it through and make sure it happens.
Okay. I'm done.
Okay. All right, Danny, you all done?
Yeah.
Okay. The GIA, the Ledge Road. Donna, you,
One of the things I was taught as a middle manager was to always delegate. I delegated, but the delegate ain't here, so I'll try to handle it myself. I guess all we're trying to do is to get access to, we have an agreement with the foundation that we can use their land to haul timber out, but the logger is not completely comfortable with that, and he wants instead to come down Ledge Road. He is willing apparently to do some work on the road so that his trucks can get in and out on that road. And so he's just saying to you guys, is that all right? It's
So-
only the class 4 part of the road that he wants to work on.
Peter Durgan stopped here before he went anywhere to ask
Yeah.
what he thought, and we talked about it quite a bit. I mean, what they're willing to do on that road is basically enforcing the agreement that we signed with the road standards on the class 4, but they're gonna do the work. So I think the only agreement that I would think they should have with them is that when they're done, that all the existing water bars that are already there still have the stone, they were stone lined, back during Irene. And that all the culverts are still in working conditions, and just leave it in a working condition when they're done. There's gonna definitely be trees that are gonna have to be cut along both sides of the class 4 up through there. But the nice thing is when it's all done, the town has a class 4 road of their own that they can get their roadside mower in and out for Kidder Hill and future logging up there. And it's not costing the town anything, except for maybe a few culverts. Peter did talk about that there's a few up there that are not very good, which it's a town responsibility anyways. And change, I give him the culvert, he's gonna put it in, so it's still a pretty good trade-off. I think it'd be wise to let them go through and just have an agreement signed that they're gonna make sure the water bars are in proper. They have standards they have to follow for these log roads anyways, so I would promote having it done, because it's only gonna benefit us, and then we can maintain it to what the standards are on the class 4 agreement in the end.
Well, according to the town access policy, it says here that notice of permission to proceed. So if the application is approved, the access administrator will issue a written permission in the form of a notice and permission to proceed notice. So, I mean, they should file the application, no?
Yeah, that's why I put
Yeah.
this, that's why I put this up.
Is there a deposit required
Is that,
here?
permit required?
Is there a deposit? No.
Yeah, there's.
There's a
Okay.
deposit, it's a
$500, I think,
minimum.
yeah.
But in there, I think there's a place that we can make notes, just saying that in the end, the water bars and culverts and all that, we could put in there as part of that
Okay.
policy for them.
I agree completely with Danny, except for this one addition to that. I just happened to walk the road not long ago, and there is a culvert right at the bottom of the, coming up Bill's Hill, and you go to the right going toward the quarry. There is a really bad culvert, there's water, it's wet, and that culvert is all exposed, it'll be destroyed. So it's things like, and I haven't walked the whole road. Somebody should go over the whole road, take pictures, tell them what needs to be upgraded just before they use it. For our purposes, not for their, I'm sure for their purposes, I can't imagine them not putting a little bit of gravel on the whole thing, whole road, because,
They're not going to.
It's gonna be a winter
It's gonna be a winter road.
okay, but they gotta fix that, area, because they'll destroy that culvert.
That's why I said that all the culverts in the end have to still be in usable
Okay.
condition.
Okay, so I think we should, but I don't think it's enough to say that. I think we need to mark them and then, list them, what they're gonna do before they used it and what they're gonna do after. Because for instance, at the beginning, there's those stone bridges, at least one. There used to be anyway in Irene, but right at the beginning, he's gonna make one of those bridges wider.
It's not at the beginning. There's no stone structures up there. There are cement decks that were put on. The very last one going up in that has the narrow signage on it is the one that he's gonna widen out
Okay.
by using his own log bridge or whatever, and then when he's done, it will be removed.
Okay,
But I think if you put in there, in this application, that, you know, the stone line crossings have to be done in the end, that all the culverts are in good usable condition in the end. If they damage it when they're doing it, they still gotta fix it in the end. They're liable for that road while they're using it.
Right, but I think the notice is fine, and it says here, the notice will list the specifications, requirements, and restrictions for the work. Notice may require supervision and/or inspection by the town. So just go up, take some pictures, and attach it to the application, let them give the $500 and let them go. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't come back, then they gotta fix it. I mean, I think if we follow the application, I think it works.
how much do you want to charge for a deposit? That deposit's just the minimum deposit.
Well, isn't it $500?
No, it's the minimum.
What-
You guys can set any deposit you want.
Oh, I thought we had set at 500.
And it is 500, that's the minimum.
Okay, all right, well, okay, so, you wanna go higher than that? I mean, do we need an approval from the select board to sign this thing?
I want some direction of you, what you want me to do, because
Right, but-
this is like 2.5 miles of road. This isn't.
No, I understand, but I'm trying to understand what,
Yeah.
I mean, this is the access policy, we have to follow this.
Yeah, but it's a little funny because that policy is really written to access a town road.
Right, I understand.
And in this case, they're using a class 4 road.
Right.
So that's the best thing we got.
No, read the purpose. A permit is required when you're gonna use a town road for your purposes, and you have to put it back like you found it. This is exactly what this is for.
Yeah,
But it's
Exactly what, that's what read that purpose.
yeah, I think the application is fine, all we have to do is follow it, and the question is, somebody needs to take pictures so that there can't be a discussion later on that this didn't exist or that, so you have proof, and also, what do you wanna make for the deposit? I mean, I think that's the real issue.
but
Is
you're not gonna
$500
force them
enough
to
or
put it back
whatever?
to What it is.
So 2,000.
Correct.
I mean, it's gonna be left better than what it is.
That's where I was trying to go with that discussion.
So, you're not gonna try to get them to do what?
You're not gonna make them put it, you're saying that they gotta put it back to what it was, well, you're
Right.
not going to, it's gonna be wider, it's gonna be better when they're done.
He's gonna improve it and then destroy it, or he's gonna improve it and leave it improved, that's the point.
Okay, my fear is he destroys it, and now we have to fix it, because remember, you guys just approved the new highway road standards, and what do they require for class 4 roads?
Bridges and culverts.
No, you have to maintain class 4 roads. If you're gonna do anything to class 4 road, you have to maintain it, right, Danny?
Yes,
That's the
but
new
like I
standard.
say, on that permit, you can list that he has to stone line, make sure all the
Right.
water bars are stone lined, all the culverts and bridges are in usable condition as they were before. You could have them put $1 million bond up, but I mean, you gotta have a little trust in
Right.
your local
Yeah.
loggers and it's the local town. I mean, this guy's done your own logging here.
I'm not recommending that the deposit be larger. Peter Durgan has been very good, he's a very good contractor, he's a very good forester. I'm just saying, the select board needs to tell us that 500 is enough, that's all I'm saying.
I mean, I think if you take the pictures and do it and charge a $500 deposit and sign the thing, I think that's sufficient.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
When you talked to Peter Durgan, did you guys actually go and walk up there
No.
together?
No. But you do have to understand that it is gonna be much wider than what it is.
Correct.
And right now, it is
But that's not a
8
detriment,
feet
is it?
wide.
That's not a detriment, is it?
No, and to widen it out, he's just gonna, stay in the right of way, which is still on a class 4 road, is still a 3-rod right of way.
Mhm.
So he just gotta stay in that, and I would just note not to disturb any stone walls, 'cause that's a shady area.
I would suggest that you and Peter and I go walk the road and look at what's there, and we can take pictures as we're doing it, but we look at what's there and talk about what he's gonna do and what we would like done. And do that before.
And then put it in
beforehand.
writing and have them sign the
And then
application.
write something that reflects what
Right.
the three of us agree on. This is a brand-new manual that's just come out. It's called the Vermont Water Quality. Also, you'll hear people talk about acceptable management practices. These are the legal standards that loggers work by. It's what the foresters require. It's what Agency of Natural Resources is going to look for on a log job, okay? They talk about the skid roads, where the skidder's going, but they also talk about log truck roads. And in this case, that class 4 road is gonna be used primarily as a log truck road. So if that's the case, the standard is written in here of what they're supposed to do. And we should write that in our
Make reference.
agreement,
make
that they have to follow.
Right, make reference to that
That's right.
standard, that's a no-brainer, actually.
Right,
But there's a place in that permit to just add that. as
Yeah.
notes in
right.
What's that, give me the name again, please?
It's,
Vermont law, so.
it's acceptable management practices. It's the book that they gave you at the events training.
So we don't need a motion here, do we?
No, I just wanted some direction, because
So,
we have to sign off on it.
okay. I mean, is everybody satisfied? Yes? Kathy?
Remember that?
Okay.
Okay, so my understanding is that you guys are gonna walk it, take pictures and make notes.
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect, and you're gonna make a reference to the new standards, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
You wanna go? Representing GIA?
I'll probably delegate it.
Just giving you an opportunity.
And are we keeping the deposit at 500?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to make it more, that's fine. I don't think it's necessary.
I think he's trustworthy, that he's gonna, he's not gonna leave it damaged.
Yeah, he's got too much of a business and too much reputation
Right.
to
No, I agree.
No, he's a good logger, I wouldn't worry about that.
He's already mentioned about some of the coverts, I think probably one is the one that you're talking about, that they had to be dug out and set in deeper, that they'd add some gravel in places, but,
spot.
so he's already asked that and asked about coverts themselves. And like I told him, so if they're existing coverts, they're ours.
Right.
So if they're damaged already, it's, the town's on the hook for that.
Exactly.
If they're damaged in the end, he's on the hook for it.
Right. We used to like to do our walk down the road when it's raining. You know, it's not a comfortable day to be outside, but it tells you what's going on with the road and where your issues are.
Yeah, no, we just, we get ahold of Peter and stuff, find out, and just set a date to do
Well,
it.
we got some rainy days coming up. That's
Yeah, Wednesday.
I might have to delegate that too.
All right, so we're all set? We can move on? Okay. The school generator, the generator contracts, and the invoice. You wanna, Bill?
I just want to start by saying that I've been the emergency management director since like 2008 or so. Initially, we had an agreement and a contract with Red Cross to use the school as a full-fledged shelter, feeding people, letting them stay there, etc. And we had a contract with them. They came and inspected that building. In addition, the town hall was going to be a warming shelter, so people could come there during the day at least and have it open 12 hours or so and send them home, or have it open all the time, but people wouldn't be sleeping there, or anything like that, wouldn't be living there. That's why we have the generator hookup at the town hall. That's why the generator.
At the school?
No, at the town hall. We have the hookup into the Wyndham Foundation generator. We were gonna put in for about $4,000 to $5,000 a generator at the building. Stan came to us and said, why don't you just, we have excess capacity in our generator, why don't you hook up there? It cost us $500 or $600 or $700, a lot better than $5,000. And they maintain the thing. Okay, so we have an agreement with them, subject to 30 days notice in case they sell to Holiday Inn. That's was the joke at the time. Okay, but it's a 30-day notice. Okay, now,
That's money.
with regard to the school is, if I remember correctly, the school board paid for it, but we agreed to maintain it. It could have been we shared the cost. We had a grant. Oh, that's right, we had a grant for it. But we keep it maintained. That's part of the contracts that we're going to talk about, okay? And, but the whole reason for it is it was going to be a shelter. Since that time, well, say 5 years ago, American Red Cross in the state of Vermont just went to hell. And they didn't really exist anymore. There hardly anybody was around, they didn't do this, that, or anything, okay? And so every time we have had a need for a shelter, like Irene, and this is the same with Springfield, because I work closely with the fire department there, they're not gonna open a shelter here. They're gonna go to Brattleboro or White River Junction. Those are the only two places, not even Springfield. Springfield's gonna have to go to White River Junction or Brattleboro.
They, meaning Red Cross.
Red Cross, that's the only centers they will open.
Correct.
We can open a shelter ourselves if we have someone who will take the training, who will form a committee to run it, who will find the liability insurance, because you don't really think of it because you think of people in need and you're just gonna feed them and house them and stuff like that. If something happens there, God forbid there's something like a predator there, that's one thing, and that is a real thing. Or somebody comes with measles, another kid gets measles and he's very, very sick and dies, that's all on us. You can't have that place without liability insurance. What it costs a year, I don't know, but that's what this committee would have to do. They would have to be dedicated to opening that shelter themselves, because American Red Cross is not gonna open a shelter in this community. I think we should rely on the warming shelter at the town hall and not rely on a shelter at the school. And for that reason, I don't think we don't need as a town to continue to pay it only because we were gonna run the shelter. If the school wants to keep it, then the school can keep it.
It's about $1,000 a year to maintain it.
That's what it costs to maintain it, $1,000. And that's all I'm saying. But the history is, it was a viable place. It no longer is a viable place unless somebody in town wants to take it over as a viable place and run it. And I've gone through with FEMA, the statewide exercise in Massachusetts, where I was at the big shelter down in Newport, Rhode Island. And it's not an easy thing. You gotta have cops there, you gotta have the health department in your kitchen, it's not just simply neighbor helping neighbor. Don't think of it that way. We like to think of it that way in Vermont. That ain't the way it is. It's a very professional thing, and it's a very risky thing if you're not.
That's if it's a Red Cross.
If you open a shelter, it's yours. All the liability is yours. You better have cops on hand. You better have the health department there. You better have everything, because if you're gonna get insurance, you're gonna be required to do that. So for that reason, I think that we should think about asking the school if they really want it. If they want the generator, then it's theirs. And we're not gonna have it anymore. That's what I think. It's an expense that, if that's the only reason, if we're doing it for the school, then fine, but let's do it for the school. But if the only reason you're doing it is for a shelter, then that is never gonna happen. We're never gonna have a shelter.
Well, if the power was out in town, and it was out for a period of time, would parents want to send their kids to school?
They-
Or would they like their kids to go to school if there's heat and there's electricity at school, and there isn't in the rest of the town? So,
The school will shut down. They won't have the kids.
that's what I think, but I'm just asking.
That's what happened before.
Right. So, having just heard all this, Joan, I've often thought that rather than having this at the school, maybe it makes more sense that that facility was at the chapel and Grafton Cares took care of it. You would have the same liability that Bill just mentioned. That seems like a pretty.
Chapel doesn't have a generator.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. If the school doesn't want it, and we've already owned it, we could relocate it to the chapel. But you would have the same obligations and commitments that you just heard Bill talk about, which is
So liability.
it's not like the good old days where you just took care of people. It's
Exactly.
like, unfortunately, the legal system.
I feel somewhat responsible because back 2 or 3 warrants ago, I questioned why this bill was $1,000 to service a generator. And then I questioned the town garage, which is a little more than 400, when I have a generator and Coda service mine for $223.
Me too.
So my question was, why, there must be something wrong. And then the question was not to get rid of the generator at the school, but it's a school expense, so let them take it over. Why are the town paying for the school expense? We don't pay to paint the building. So that was my original, but now the whole thing has come up with the shelter, that's another issue. I wasn't aware of that.
Right, it wasn't put there at the school's request. It was put there at the request of the town to use it as a facility,
Right.
like Bill.
So now you can't use it, so maybe that should be, my question was, maybe the school should pay for the servicing of the generator.
But it wasn't put there for them, and that's why I asked, would the school run if there wasn't a power in the rest of town? More than likely not, so why would they want to pay for other than keeping their pipes from freezing in the
That's a
school?
good reason. I will approach them still and see if they'd be interested,
But
unless you have other.
how sure are we that the American Red Cross will not do this as a shelter?
I'm absolutely positive.
Yeah.
Have they written us a letter? Have they canceled the
Don't know.
contract? Have they, how do we know?
We went to a meeting and that was spelled out to us, that meeting we went to in Brattleboro.
Notice that Springfield has the best assets in the whole area, much better assets and much better located than both Brattleboro or White River Junction. And they told Springfield, forget it, we're not opening a shelter in your town.
Right.
We need it in the region, and the region is White River Junction and Brattleboro.
Mhm.
They're not gonna open it here.
Don't we own the school building now as a town?
Well, we do.
Yeah, but remember, we own the school building, but the school maintains it.
Well,
Okay,
the-
so the
no,
school may
they,
be-
for all practical purposes, they own it. We own the school, the building and the land, they leased it and they, as if they own it.
And then, it's no different if the plumbing stops or the water, if that's their expense, the generator should be their expense as well, in my opinion.
Well, if we want to look a little long-term, when there's no longer a Grafton Elementary School, because they're all
Which
going
is
to
coming up.
when they're all going to Westminster, and it becomes a senior center, we may want to have electricity at the senior center.
Well, yeah, but then the senior center would have to run that, it would never be the town. anyway.
But my point is, it's a better package with a generator there, if we start to look long-term, what's coming.
That's another consideration.
Well, that's why I'm just getting it out on the table, so people think about it, big picture.
When I've taught at the school, there's been days when I've been there, where the generator comes on. And if you don't have the generator, everything shuts down in terms of their computers, and they have to boot everything back up. So they rely on that generator.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, but why should not be a school expense, not a town expense? I think
No,
the
I agree
generator
with
should,
the school expense, but.
I think the generator should stay there, and the school should pay for the,
It's just a matter of which pocket you take the money out of.
Yeah, but it's still, it's.
But Al, that pocket will be shared with 3 towns.
Yes,
That's true.
It
yes.
sounds like there's also a concern that we may be being overcharged, whether it's the school or the town, for the maintenance of this generator.
Well, I think we're being overcharged, quite
Who
frankly,
maintains that
but,
generator?
but maybe not, maybe yes, yes, Bill.
No,
The school.
no,
School ones.
we're not being overcharged, not the school one, and maybe not even for this one. There's only, we called around again today. I had written to 5 different people. One of them got back and they said, we don't even do that. The one that I was told does it, this power people in Swansea, they never even got back to me. And the other people said, no, they're not gonna do the school at all. The only,
Well, school, I know they
and
can't.
every one of them said, there's only one person that can do that in the area, which I presume means New Hampshire also, and that's Brookfield. And that's the one we have doing it. There's no one else.
But
who
the
do it.
town, the garage, same situation?
Well, we haven't been able to find anybody else that will do it. We did find HB would do it, and then they started talking about, but if this happens, that happens, this happens, that happens. And they may be a better deal at $60 cheaper, but we've had really good experience with Brookfield, so I'm not gonna recommend for $60 less, we take HB.
Okay, but
Yeah.
you called, Kim, you were
Well,
supposed to call,
I did, and what I found too is like, we can get a contract for 329, an actual contract like we have with Brookfield. So we're going from $330 to $400. And theirs is also a contract. Or you can do what's called an on-call service, and for $275, you can have them come once a year and just service it. So you can do the on-call, the per diem, or you can do the contract. Either one is gonna do your fluids and it's gonna do your filter. It's gonna do the inspection. But if you were to call for an emergency, Brookfield's gonna charge you also outside of the contract, so would HB. And it goes by whether it's on during working hours or not, $175 for the first hour, $98 for thereafter. If it's after hours or on the weekends, it's even more.
It seems
So-
reasonable they should both be the same, whoever it is. So when they come to service, they can do them both the same trip.
Both, they can't do the school, because it's too big. There's no one
Well,
that's
if
gonna.
it's Brookfield, they could do both.
Brookfield can do
That's what
both,
I'm
and that's
saying.
who we have now,
And-
so it's 400 for Danny's.
And they do
They
that.
do both.
They
Right.
do
Yeah.
both at the same time.
That's what I'm saying.
But if you're not, I would think if you had a contract with them, you know, it's kind of more guaranteed if you have a problem, they're coming. But if they're gonna charge you the same rate,
Same rate.
you might as well just give them a call, say come service a generator for $200
We-
less.
You can do that, yeah, so you can break them apart and just have yours with somebody else as an on-call service, and the school stays with Brookfield.
That's what I do with
But
Coda,
it's your
I don't have a
relationship
contract,
as
I
to
just
what
call
you
them and
wanna
say, it's time, it's summer, it's time to do the generator, and they come and they charge me $223 or whatever it is, and if something happens to it in the interim, I call them, they charge me for that. You pay for the repair or the time. But, you know, that could be a budget an issue. I think the real issue is, what do you want to do with the generator in the school? Do you want to put it into the town budget, or should we request that it goes into the school budget? I recognize it's the same pocket, but still.
Okay, the generator has to be decided tonight, because we have to, if we're gonna save money on it, it's cheap, we save
$60.
$60 on the school if we pay it by the 4th of November, and we save $20 on the garage if we pay it by the 4th of November. But if we, so that's the reason we brought it to you tonight, and hopefully get a decision tonight, so we can pay it early and save it.
So what does the board want to do?
Well, it should be maintained.
Well, we have to maintain it, I think. But, I mean, the question is it, do you want to just sign it and we pay the $1,000 and $400 and the next year you deal with the school, or you want to
I think
just?
at this point, there's not enough time to have a good discussion with the school. We don't have much choice.
That's my
But
point.
I think it's a discussion that should happen, but it needs to happen with more lead time.
All right, so why don't we put that as, when we get to the budget in the next couple of weeks, we can discuss that when we get to those line items and talk to the school.
Right.
And for now, just continue with this, with the contract as is in the past. Do we need a motion for that, Bill?
Yes, please. So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay, all right, that takes care of that. But let's make a note, Bill, and Kim, and any, you know, select board, when we get to the budget, let's talk about the school and various things like that.
Can I just add to what Al just said? We didn't bring this up tonight, the part about the school, expecting you to do something
No, I understand.
about that tonight. All of this discussion about how much it costs triggered the discussion about, well, do we want to keep it or give it to school? We recognize that it's going to be, we're going to have to pay the bill this year.
Right, and we can discuss this for the budgetary for next year, and then send a letter to the school, or have them come in, or whatever the case might be. Kim, you have another part, is the invoices.
After getting, our second supplemental bill sent out and having NEMRA come down and work a program for us and receiving their invoice, along with the invoice for, the extra tax bill that needed to be generated, I'm concerned about the cost. So I called Westminster to see kind of where they're standing, and their situation was they were also going to, at that time, and I don't know what they decided to do, is approach and submit their invoices, because this was an incident that was not planned, it was not budgeted, and it wasn't due to any fault of the town to take on the expense of having NEMRA come in and redo. We're looking at $1,000 from NEMRIC and $570 for the extra tax bills. So it's almost a $1,600 expense to the town that was not budgeted for and unforeseen. So my request, I was talking to Westminster, and they were having the same feeling that maybe they were going to present to the school board their invoices also for reimbursement.
So the question is, do we want to take that position? And if we do, we have to pay the bill anyway.
We've paid the bill, but
Okay.
my feeling is I'm looking to, send it on to the school board. It's, you know, it should be in their budget.
It's not something we created.
I agree.
I agree.
Send it to school.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes, I
Yeah.
would like one.
Make that.
Alan, you made it? Okay. Do we have a second? I think you did, Kathy.
Second.
Okay. So all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay. Send the bill.
Okay.
Let's see what happens. Worst can happen, nothing. The best is we get some money.
Now, Joe,
Yes.
before we leave this topic, it just seems to me that in the investigation of the cost of the generator, this really important issue came up about where's our shelter going to be? And if it's not gonna be at the school, where is it gonna be? How are we gonna figure that out?
Brattleboro
And,
Red River, that's where you go.
Well, I guess I was just wondering if, you know, under the circumstances of Irene, for example, we couldn't have even gotten there because we were completely blocked from getting anywhere.
Won't be the time.
And so I'm just wondering, the only reason I'm bringing it up while we're still on this topic is since we're taking an action item to do the budget part, should we also take an action item to think
No, that has to be an
longer term about
agenda
our
item.
shelter?
Sorry, that's not on the agenda. That's a.
No, that's what I'm saying, a future
Well,
agenda
you
or
could.
action item to do.
Somebody would have to bring that forward to put on the
Okay.
agenda.
Okay.
Bill?
If I can address that. During Irene, we were told they were going to Brattleboro. During Irene, we had one person, we opened the shelter, actually. We had one person potentially going there, and he slept in the tavern. And we had 3 other people, I think they all, the inn put them on. But the one guy just slept in the tavern, he didn't need anything special, he said. And,
Slept or passed out?
no, he slept. Yeah. He's from the other side of London area, not quite to Manchester, up in the mountains there. And he went back the next day. He got home the next day, and you're not gonna like the roads I'm gonna drive on, so anyway, he went back. But, so that was, but American Red Cross, it was no uncertain terms, they were not gonna open anything here. And we could have opened the school, because we had the agreement from them and everything, and they said no.
When the foundation opened up for quite a few, more than 2 or
Yeah.
3.
Yes, yeah.
I think there's at least
But
5
this-
from the
That's
highway
right.
department that stayed there.
But this is a regular thing, right? It needs to go on the agenda,
Yeah.
and it just can't something you can talk about. It's not something, it's gonna cost a lot of money, and who's gonna run it? So, you know, at some point, maybe the planning commission, as part of their duties, will start it out, or maybe there needs to be a new committee started, but somebody ought to, you know, take the project on. It's,
But the
it's,
liabilities will be the same.
It-
Right.
yeah, it's beyond the list, it's beyond the select board or the town to take that responsibility,
Yeah,
I
no,
believe.
I totally get that. I was just wondering if there might be some other alternatives, but that was just.
So Frances
I'm glad it
Alfred
came up.
opened her house up, took 2 people in, one died and the other broke her hip, so. No, I'm just kidding, it
No.
was the truth.
No, but I mean, I guess if it
She
is.
offers again, be careful.
Right, if an individual wants to open their house, whether it's safe or not, that's up to them, but, and she has the liability, not the town, so.
There were several folks that took the Red Cross training, I being one of them. There are some firefighters and responders. And when we had there were 2 or 3 other little floods that we had before Irene. And the Vermonters, our Grafton folks are tough, and they just wanna stay put. But we did have a couple go to the tavern. And one flood, some people went over to Saxon's River School and we get food. Maybe there was a family that did stay overnight, not from Grafton, but from Rockingham. But we were faced with the liability issue, and it just died. But I had no information about the Red Cross in Brattleboro dying. I mean, but we took a lot of that training, and I have a card that I hold that, you know, it's like lifetime, you know, Red Cross provider. Anyways, it's just food for thought, and I think you make a good point about, yeah, we do need some form of shelter, something, some plan. And I think a lot of that information did come when we had the aftermath thing that happened with the winter storm. So we need to, you know, look at that, be more serious about it.
They're small towns, yeah.
Well, maybe we can get some volunteers who want to start a committee and do the investigation. I don't see the training as the issue, I see the liability as the real
Yeah, the
problem.
liability sounds like a big problem.
I just, when you look at what happens in Vermont, you either get a road washout, or you get an ice storm, you get a long-term power outage. It's like, people aren't gonna come, well, maybe the people in the village would go to the school or something like that, but I'm certainly not coming from my place down there. And everybody that lives out there, they're not coming. They're gonna find out which neighbor's got a wood stove and which neighbor has a generator, and they're going there. And I'll bring something that's thawing out, and I'll bring it with me. You know, it's like, you look at what happened when the big storm hit in the south, and everybody was looking for the government to help out at the Astrodome or whatever dome it was. And then you look at the people in Minnesota and they say, what's the big deal? It's just life here. We just take care of it. And I'd like to think we're not yet where we have to wait for the government.
I speak for myself. I mean, I have a generator in my house, and if a neighbor didn't have a generator and was going on for, I mean, I would certainly feed him and invite the individual to come and stay. I mean, I think the average Grafton resident would not want to see their neighbor freezing to death. They would go and do something, so.
It's like,
So.
Yeah, they can come to my house, but I don't think so.
is that right? But it's warm. Well, if you're lucky, maybe they'll bring some food with you.
All right, let's move on then. Water quality. Suze, is that, you're gonna give this report, I'm assuming?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So tonight, in front of you, you have the water quality report. We're shifting our days now from shelter to water. You have the water quality report, which you received, I think, about a week or so ago. So tonight, I am reporting on behalf of our water study committee. Two of our members are here, Chris and Kim. And Meg, I have to acknowledge, has been a really big help to our committee. She's here tonight, too. So as of August 29th, we completed the residential drinking water quality test in the septic pumping district of the village of Grafton. That's the set of houses we asked to be tested, and we had 60, as you saw, who volunteered to have their drinking water tested. So that's what's known as the study area. And the water quality report is authored by Mark Johnson, who was our RCAP partner, and the Vermont Department of Health. And I'm just going to briefly go over the two key takeaways and our next steps. And then our committee will entertain any questions you have about the report itself. So excuse my voice. The two key takeaways from our report are, good news, the drinking water wells in the study are generally potable. That is, we have safe drinking water in the village of Grafton, according to this test. The second key takeaway is that there are no indications of widespread failing septic systems in our study area. And our study area is obviously the concentrated area of wells and septic systems. It was noted in the report that the presence of a septic pumping ordinance is a large contributor, or it's maybe a large contributor to the fact that we do have the situation of no issues with failing septic and potable drinking water. So, if you were a member of the select board and a resident of Grafton when that ordinance was enacted, good job. It's really a big plus for our community that we have that septic pumping ordinance. So the next steps for our committee are based on this conclusion in the report, and I would like to quote it. It's on page 2, number 9. The village, it's highlighted on your report that I distributed, the village, more accurately the town of Grafton, would still like to determine next steps related to the possible future of development of either water or wastewater infrastructure. And the committee's goal is to inform that discussion. The good news is that the village's collective hand is not being forced. In other words, if we had poor drinking water, our hand would have been forced, but we don't. So we have time to continue to look at the need of the village in a thoughtful manner. So the points here are that our committee's charge is both water and wastewater, but as a practical matter, since we have already results that say we have safe drinking water, our next priority is going to be looking at wastewater systems. Now, we are going to educate, our approach to this is to educate ourselves and to educate the community on what is the latest technology, what are alternatives for wastewater management in the village. And we are going to engage, our plan is to engage subject matter experts in this field. We have 2 recommendations from the Vermont Department of Health, and we have 1 recommendation from our committee members, Nat Ciano. And we are going to ask these subject matter experts to help us understand what our options are. But before we even do that, we're going to go back and familiarize ourselves with the data that has already been collected from the past 2 studies, so make sure we get our money's worth as a town from those studies, and the new committee is familiar with what's in those reports. And then the second thing we're going to do, which Kim is going to lead for us, is we are going to really do an analysis of our current septic situation, how old are our septic systems, and what's their history. Because the latest data we have is at least 20 years old. So we're going to update that. That's our very next step. So I think that's all I want to say in terms of our report. We'll keep you posted. And now, if you have any questions, our committee will entertain those. And if you feel like I left something out of the key takeaway nature, okay.
So, looking at your report on the 3rd page,
I knew you would want to.
where you say 25 systems are more than 25 years old. So, will you look at, it's inevitable, sooner or later, one of those systems will fail.
Exactly.
And so with new regulations, and many of those are on small little plots of land, what do we do when that happens?
Well,
Or what does the landowner do
Yeah.
when that happens? And with the new regulations, can they put a new septic system on that site?
That's a very good question.
Actually, I can answer that question.
Isn't that why we were gonna have
So
like a
I just
speaker
want to
come
capture
through?
this question, can they put a new septic on the site?
But I can answer that question.
Well, wait,
Okay.
I want to hear what Kim had
Yeah.
a comment, I didn't hear what she said.
Yeah, okay, let's go with.
I was
Kim
just
and
saying,
let's go.
that was one of the reasons we were gonna have the colleague and a couple other come and talk to us about small individual septics that are available now, that were not there
So you're
20
looking
years
at,
ago.
so you're looking at that.
So we're looking at
Okay.
that, yeah. That's
Okay.
one of the things we want to educate ourselves on, besides to going for a big system, what can
Yeah.
individuals actually get
Okay,
if need be.
cool.
The 2 meetings I went to, the question come up, what do you do? Where you have a town that has small plots and you
Mhm.
can't put the traditional septic in.
Right.
What they do is they replace the septic system with some kind of a mechanical thing. The school, the Grafton MKT has a similar system, but not, it's where they have to pump it every so many months. But then if that doesn't work, then you go to something where you pump it more frequently, and then you have a holding tank, and then they come every week or every month, whatever it is. But they will never deny you of a system, but it becomes very expensive for the landowner. But that would depend on the situation, and each situation would be different. But just because the house doesn't have the land and it fails, they don't have to. There is options.
Right.
So,
But at some point, when you look at how many old systems there are, there's certainly a possibility of multiple failures. And then there'll be a push, somebody will be pushing for well, we have a lot of these, can you help us out? So,
Well, if you, were you here the last, I don't know if it was the last select board meeting or something, there were two septic systems, I think, that were just, something was done to them recently. And somebody was, I think that was a discussion with Rick. I don't know what the outcome there was, or why they failed, or why they had to be repaired. But that was a question, because, you know, you have to fix them properly. You just can't do something that because you want to do it that way, so.
That's why, like, this chart that you're looking at on page 3 is kind of misleading, because it was 20 years ago, and that's where our committee broke up into 2 groups, and we want to look, some of these that are 25 years have actually been updated. Like the one at the store.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah.
You know, and we have documentation only from 99 to 2006, and after that, we'll have to go to the state, and I'm sure we can look up through the state what's been repaired or replaced. But, those are old numbers.
Yeah, and these numbers themselves are old, because in the next paragraph you read, add about 19 years to these estimates.
right.
So,
is
I
that-
mean,
that means they're
these
44 years
yeah,
old?
They could have been updated now.
These data are very old, and that's why we want to step back and understand what's in these older reports, but then we need, as Kim says, to update them. But I think your question, Al, is 2 parts. One is, what do we do if there's an immediate failure and we have a situation on our
Correct.
hands?
Correct.
And I think Joe addressed that based on what he knows, but I think that's also a question we'll take up and ask our partners and our subject matter experts.
Right.
While we're conducting this study and trying to figure out the answer to the longer term issue possibly, what are we gonna do if something fails in the meantime?
Right.
And so we'll work on that. The fact is that because we don't have any failures now, does not mean,
Correct.
because of our historical wastewater system, that we won't have failures.
Correct.
So we can't sit here and
Right.
just say,
Assume
okay,
everything's
everything's
good.
fine.
Right,
We've
exactly.
got to go, continue to do our study, and that's why we prioritize wastewater next.
So, can I have another question? Sure. Okay, so my next
They're very
question,
talkative today.
well, get my money's worth. The next question I have is, you know, all this talk on the town plan about growth and we need this and we need that, and I hear people say, well, you know, so-and-so was gonna put in an office here, but they couldn't have a septic system, whatever. I look at 2 possibilities that may or may never develop, but I look at the Wyndham Foundation office that they're scaling down. That goes on the market depending on who buys it and what they want to do with it. That might require a bigger septic system. And I look at the school and say, not completely tongue-in-cheek, that I see that sometime in the future as a senior housing center when it's no longer a school. And both of those scenarios I see require some kind of a bigger septic system, because you start to have people bathing and showering and cooking meals, and either one of those scenarios are gonna change the demand on a septic system. And it would be a shame to have an opportunity for some senior housing and you can't do it because there's no way to take care of it.
Certainly.
So is that also
This is
something
definitely
that your
on
committee will look at?
Absolutely, this is something on our radar screen. We're gonna be very data driven, and we're going to collect data on the places that are reputed to have left Grafton because they didn't have adequate septic. That was part of our brainstorming session, some ideas that came up. We're gonna interview people like June and say, what are the constraints that MKT has because of your septic? I think you've added to another really good one, which is the school and the Wyndham Foundation. We need to actually understand what are the growth implications of having or not having.
Correct.
And thankfully, we have Chris on our team with a link to the Planning Commission and the survey that they're gonna do, and we're gonna think about even questions we can add to the planning commission survey to get that back. So, yeah, definitely on our radar.
Perfect.
Any other questions? Thank you, Sue. for
Thank
the-
you.
Go ahead.
There's something I think that the select board should really consider in the future. It's called overshadowing. You know what the term is, Bill? Anyway, this is what happened to me and my wife this past spring. It's where a neighbor next to you builds a house, and all of a sudden part of your property, the leach field can be, like in my case, it was across 35, but the whole potential overshadowing property went right next to my garage, where my light post is, and about 20 feet from where my well is. And I went, wait a minute, this doesn't work. I mean, that property runs downhill. We're on mountains over here. You've got fissures, I don't have to explain to you. And boom, you know, I could have a potential problem, and going back and forth, and the lawyer's fees are going ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. That there's no state law about it, and we don't have an ordinance about it. But it's something that the select board should really consider in the future, that a potential builder, he could be 100 yards from you, but he's uphill, and he decides to put the leach field 50 yards from your house instead of the other hill, so it goes down into the valley and who knows where.
I don't know about, you know, I don't understand the term, but
It's
today,
overshadowing.
when you have to build a new septic system, you have to have an engineer, it has to be approved, the site has to approve, they have, I mean,
They did.
you just can't put anything where you wanna put it, so.
They did, and that's how I know where the coordinates are, because their attorney sent us, they had to by law inform us what was going on. And I said, no, this doesn't work, you know, I mean, whatever this engineer was, you know, I mean, it's a no-brainer. Go down the other way.
Bill?
Yeah, he's right. The state regulation doesn't require that you're set back beyond your land, which is really stupid, but that's the law.
Well,
So we can still ask our
Peter,
experts
yeah, I
about
think that's something that the committee
overshadowing.
probably should take a look at.
Yeah, I think
And
that's-
maybe at some point in time, we have to have some kind of updated pumping ordinances or whatever, but
Yeah.
certainly, we're not gonna solve it here tonight,
No.
but thank you for
Yeah.
bringing that attention.
No, definitely, I made a note of that, Peter, and we'll add that to our list, of course.
Okay, if there's no other question, Alan, are you the ash borer expert,
I
or?
asked, I would put it on the
Yes,
agenda.
but,
That doesn't mean I'm the
no, but I mean, who's gonna speak, are you gonna speak
I'm
to
gonna
it?
speak to it.
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
gonna
that's what I mean.
introduce it, okay?
Yep,
So, this is something I've known about for quite a while, and, well, and I have to say, even myself, I took kind of a casual, well, it's not here, and it's gonna be a while. And then, when I went to Minnesota and I drove by all the ash that was dead out on the 90 on the western end of New York, it was like miles and miles and miles, and like, whoa, that's what it looks like. And then to recently here, oh, it's in Londonderry. And it's like, oh, this is ups the ante. If you remember a while ago, I discussed a little bit here at the select board meeting and asked if we should do an inventory, and there was some resistance that, well, why do we want to know? What, you know, maybe we don't want to know. But it seems like if you're going through your planning and your budget, it would be nice to know how many of the ash trees are in the town right away, and they're gonna be future cost to the town. How many of the ash are, oh, that's on Joan's property, that's her, she's gotta take care of that, that's not a cost to us. But it seems like it could affect your budget, if you're talking a couple trees, or if you're talking a couple hundred trees that you're gonna have to remove. Or you can just wait until they fall down, like the two did that came across 121, just below the foot of the hill here, and clean them up one by one or a couple at a time. I'm not pushing this thing in any direction. I'm just asking the board, do we want to spend some energy or some money to do an inventory and find out how many trees are we talking about that are in the road right away of Grafton? Or do we want to just say, hey, we'll take care of it when the time comes? And if you also remember, I said, well, before we go too far with this, we do have a tree warden in town, at least a person that has that title next to their name. I asked Bill to contact Tracy, Joan's son, and see if he would be interested, and I guess the comment was he would be interested in getting involved. I sent him an email over the weekend saying that it was on the agenda to be discussed, and I sent him the link to the situation in Londonderry. And he responded and said that he thanked me for keeping him in the loop. Kind of thought he might be here, but he isn't. So that's just background, and I'd like to have some input from the board. What do we want to do or not want to do about it?
I don't know, the trouble is you can't stop the ash borer.
Can't stop it.
So it's gonna happen.
Nope.
And I don't know how many miles of roads we have, Danny, it's what? How much?
48.
Okay.
55, we lose some?
Must be counting class 4. I don't think we're in it.
So there's gotta be hundreds of ash trees on the town right away, hundreds. I mean, I can't imagine it can't be, it's gotta be. I mean, I didn't particularly look, but when we had this discussion a couple of months ago, I do a lot of walking in the mornings, and I started to look at the ash trees along the road. There's a lot of ash trees along the road, so we're not talking about one tree or 50 trees, we're talking hundreds of trees, or maybe even more.
Yeah, I think an inventory would be prudent, but there's no way of predicting the speed
Nope.
that it's gonna happen. My understanding is there's a small percentage, 10% or less, that have a natural immunity to the blight, so they're not encouraging you to take down ash trees prematurely because you want to preserve those that could withstand the blight. So that's something we have to be aware of as well.
You also might want to create a policy that gives us the right to cut the trees in the right of way.
But I think that's something that maybe Tracy or somebody like him could give us some sort of a economic estimate of what it would be. I mean, is it gonna be $1,000, is it gonna be $3,000 to do a ash count on the highways? And then that could be something we could discuss at budget time. But it's hard to discuss it without knowing what the cost is gonna be.
Well, yeah.
Do we know what other municipalities that have been affected by this to the rest of us?
I talked with the emergency management director over in Londonderry, and they've done the inventory, and they know. I have talked to a retired forester that actually used to work for, and he's in Wethersfield, and they've done an inventory in Wethersfield, where they've actually driven the road and identified and mapped out the trees.
Within the town right of way on all
Within the town right away. And you have to be able to tell an ash tree from a basswood tree, and they look very similar. You have to be able to tell the difference, because it doesn't affect the basswood.
So maybe we could get some sort of an estimate from him, or somebody who would like to do the thing and see what the cost would be. It's hard to discuss doing something unless you know what's gonna cost.
Well,
Did any cost?
well, no, I guess you could look at it that way. If somebody says, don't bother, we'll just take care of them when they happen, we don't need to.
Well, I think it's a big difference if it's $100 versus, $5,000. I mean, I'm using, extremes, but, if it's only gonna be a few dollars, maybe it's worth it, but if it's gonna be expense,
The inventory?
yeah. I mean, I don't know, who knows what it's gonna cost. I mean, that's a lot of work to do 40 some odd miles of road and map it out. It's not something you do in 5 minutes.
You should train, you guys can bet fun. You're driving around.
They have needles, right?
So,
How many people did the survey?
Beatles.
How many?
How many, did you find out how many people did the survey in Londonderry?
and what they cost?
I'm guessing the guy probably did it himself, didn't charge anything.
I agree.
That's what I'm guessing,
That's
because I know the
kinda what
guy,
Yeah.
he's a forester, so.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think.
But he's just riding the roads, you're just riding the roads and looking at the trees.
Right, it's a windshield crew.
So it's what you don't see,
No, it's right, all we're worried about is
It's the
right away.
right of way.
just the right of way.
Well, the ones in the right of way are the only ones we have jurisdiction on.
Correct.
Do we? You don't have a tree policy, that's what I said, you need to have policy first. We do not have the right technically to cut trees in the right of way. There is no brush policy in this town. It is a real fine line.
But
what
isn't
you
there,
cut.
if I remember correctly, going back many years, isn't there something in the VSA titles about cutting trees in right-of-ways and what the responsibility of the selectmen are?
There's no policy of it.
But don't you
Not
need a
too
policy
many
if there's a
years ago,
law?
There was trees in the right of way, and as soon as they become dead, then they were the towns.
Right.
But during a windstorm, they came down and damaged the house, and the town's insurance had to pay for it. Yet you try going up to someone and saying, I'm gonna cut that tree off your front yard because it's a problem. They're not gonna let you. So you can have all these lists of these ash trees that are dying in the right of way. Do you have the right as a town to cut it?
Well, I guess that's a good place to start.
Well, I guess, I have a note here, let's go, I remember going, when I served on the board before, we had some kind of a policy on cutting trees, because that was an issue. I don't know if it ever was voted or whatever, but
I've never seen.
maybe
one,
we
so
can
I've
go by
always-
and look at
I
it. so.
felt that it was more than brush, I always talked to the landowner.
Can you?
Yeah,
research?
I have it on the note, but we'll look at
Let's,
that.
I mean,
Okay?
that's the place to start.
All
If we can't cut them, it doesn't really matter.
No,
Yeah.
you're right, I agree. We need to start with the budget workshops. And so what we did last year was we scheduled meetings in the morning or afternoon over at the town hall. And everybody has their worksheet, and we would sit down and they would go starting. And I think we did it in two sessions, maybe three, I think. So when do we want to start this, and what is the availability?
Well, we don't need to do all of them in the afternoon, right? But we need to do Danny. We need to do the highway stuff.
No, everybody comes in,
Danny's work.
everybody came in, in other
Well,
words, the
no,
fire.
I know
yeah,
that.
okay.
But I'm saying we could do some of the budget process could be done in the evening. We definitely need to do the highway
It works
stuff.
better if you do it during the day, quite frankly. It's open, they're open meetings, don't get me wrong, but it worked better, and Kim, did it work well last year and whatever?
It did.
Yeah, so there's no reason to change it. The question is, we
Everybody
need,
put their own numbers in, and then we all met and just.
yeah, and then we only worked for an hour and a half, and then we just stopped and we went on for the next time, so we need to figure out maybe you got some dates we can start, give to Bill what your schedules are, so, like if you're gonna be in town or out of town or whatever, and we can, send an email for dates and pick them, and then we can actually get started. But the first thing you gotta do is make sure you take the worksheet, start working on that. That Kim gave us, did you not give it? I think we all got it.
I gave everybody a set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we can give some dates, I mean, maybe you wanna start in November, but too early,
I'll be honest.
That's fine.
okay? So let's say it's like starting to, get some dates starting the first week in November, give them to Bill, and he can send some emails out and we can pick them and get started. And I think, I don't know, Bill, did we notify, I think we notified everybody else, Kim. Kim, you could tell the fire department and the library, and I got an email from Dave Culver wanting to know yesterday, over the weekend, that do I have to have a budget for the planning commission? I wrote back, yeah, you do. So,
Yeah, I told them that last year.
yeah,
I've also asked for Chuck to submit his hours so
Right.
we know where he
Yeah,
stands
exactly.
too on the DRB and the planning commission,
Right.
and I haven't heard anything from them.
and
That was a while ago.
if the committee is gonna do something with the health officer and you're gonna increase hours, we need to know that too, because that has to all get budgeted in.
Can we do it in the first 2 weeks of November so that we're done before, 12 days before Thanksgiving?
And deer season.
Oh, dear, see.
No,
I have to
no,
agree.
you can take off an hour or two and not, we're not talking all day, Alan, we're only talking a couple of hours.
That's bow season, isn't
No, well,
Is there,
yeah.
is there a day of the week that doesn't work?
Wednesdays do not work for me. but-
No, I know, Kim can't make it on Wednesday, so.
Anything other than that?
I don't have any, I have to look at my calendar, but no, I'm good
And I
Monday,
prefer
Tuesday,
not
Thursday, Friday.
Right.
Friday, Bill's not here, so, maybe we do it Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday.
Right.
That's fine.
How's that, all
Okay,
right?
so
Okay?
you got that work for everybody?
The next question, I don't know why this happened, Bill, but we have this letter that was requested by the Wyndham Regional Broadband Feasible Study and Business Planning, that we sign a letter supporting their efforts to do
Get money for a grant to do a study on broadband,
Yeah.
or to get assistance to put broadband in
Right.
those underserved areas like Grafton.
right, I read in the paper this morning that there's not consensus on the board to continue that process, is that right? The select board of, I think Brattleboro was thinking about doing it, and I think we're starting their own, and they're questioning whether they should or shouldn't. So, I don't know what the wisdom here is, I haven't followed that closely.
What's the cost to the town?
I don't know, what kind of money are they talking for us? Nothing, just a
Nothing
letter?
from us, they just want us to
They just want a
support their
letter?
application. Yeah, all they want is support their application, we're not.
Okay. Well, then, it just seems to me there's no harm in it. As long as we don't have,
Money, why should we not sign it?
exactly.
Well, anyway, the biggest thing is that for all those people that have Verizon and can't call out of town in the middle of town.
But that's true.
We might want this, so that's what I'm thinking.
So,
Or even if you have AT&T and you go 300 yards out of town. you're-
So if you agree, then somebody make a motion, and we can pass the thing and sign it. Okay,
Second.
all right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Bill, that's the support the broadband, so I'll sign it and forward it on to the rest of the board. Okay. The next is public comment. Any public comment? Okay, yes, go ahead. Alan, you must have been charged up today.
Well, this one, I woke up the other night and I lay there thinking about this. And because I lost sleep over it, I have to share this with you. Okay? In the town plan, where it says the no idle, I know there's some people that have some thoughts on it. But I really started to think about what does that really mean? And it's like, if you're gonna put signs up, no idle, well, you don't wanna put them in the road right away. You don't wanna put them where you're plowing, right? If you're putting a sign up that says no idle. So if you're, like, say for example, at the store, you know, oh, you're gonna put a sign up on those posts on the store that says no idle? Well, that's not town property, that's private property. And then, well, how much does this affect? Does it mean that the teachers over at the school can't use their remote starter to warm the car up and idle? You know, well, then you gotta have some signs over at the school. And what about all the cars that are parked at the tavern and all those people that are at the tavern that would like to warm their car up? Or what about the person that would like to run the air conditioner to keep their dog cool in front of MKT? You know, so how are we gonna implement it? And who's gonna be the one to go tell somebody to turn their car off?
I would save that for November 7th.
Well, and I'm just telling you, I think we ought to talk about it, because it's like, how is that gonna get, I know, but we can bring things up under public comment and say, let's put it on the agenda for the future, and that's my intent. But I just happened to think about, well, how is that gonna work?
The time to do that would be on November 7th, when we
Okay.
have the final meeting of
Okay.
the Town hall.
But I just.
Yes, Bill?
November 7th.
What time?
For some reason,
A lot of things happening.
the GIA, word didn't get out, and I have no idea why, but they have a film that night for, especially for veterans.
The reception.
It's the reception's on the 9th, but on the 7th is the film, the World War I film. They were founded to honor the vets of World War I, that's where they started 100 years ago. So, this might be an editorial comment. I don't think you're gonna get anything done on November 7th anyway, because there's gonna be too many changes.
When I went home that night and looked at November 7th, that's my anniversary, and my wife and I were going to go away for a couple of days. But I can't change that because that's just me. But if there's a conflict, I have no problem changing the date.
Well, I'm just saying that, I don't know, it's not on the agenda to change the date, but I don't see.
But we could do it under other
accomplishing
business.
anything at all that night.
We could do it
because
under
there's too
business,
many
Bill.
changes.
I mean, we could do that on the other business, change the date from the
Yeah,
7th to
but-
something else.
Maybe, but there's people who might oppose it.
Unless you want to do it on the, what is the next select board meeting?
Well, the next select board meeting is the 4th.
Yeah, that's a little close. So, I mean, if it's on, changing on the 4th, that really changes.
And the main thing I wanted to do, I don't want to interfere with the GIA celebration, and that's, if we had known about that,
Yeah,
I would have brought that up earlier. That's the only reason.
So, I mean, we can do it on the business, or we can have a special meeting, either one. I'm all for changing the date, but that's just me. I didn't even realize GIA was doing something then.
Okay, let's take it up under other business, and I have an idea.
Okay. Any more public comment? Okay, so now we're in other business. Let's
Okay,
talk about the date.
Why don't we talk about the date, and why don't we call right now, call a special meeting for next Monday night at 5 o'clock at the town hall, just to discuss the date? Or at 4:30, I don't care.
Why can't we do it now?
Because it's not on the
It's not
agenda.
on the agenda.
I don't,
Yeah, we didn't adopt the.
I don't want you to do it because there might be people who are looking forward to November 7th and they're just dying to get there, so.
We're
you
doing-
They
know,
need a light.
Well, just, let me just ask a question. Since there is a town meeting scheduled on, isn't there a public hearing scheduled on November 14th?
Yes, there is.
That's a special town meeting, isn't it?
That's a special town meeting,
Oh,
that's not a town
okay,
hearing.
that was my question, that's, okay.
I just think that maybe we ought to just do it, talk about it tonight so the word kind of gets out, and then have a meeting where we discuss it.
I don't have.
That's my opinion, but I mean, you guys are the ones that run it, so.
I mean, I don't have a problem calling a special meeting. I mean, it's up to you guys how you want to handle it. You have two choices. You can do it tonight, or you can have it, call a special meeting whenever, tomorrow, Monday.
Yeah, well,
whatever.
we're gonna meet tomorrow night anyways, with the Board of Abatement. Well, is it too late for a special?
Yeah.
Yeah.
24 hours, yeah.
Rather keep that separate.
Right.
Yeah.
What time's that? I didn't write that.
5:30?
That was gonna come under other
5:30 at the
business,
town hall.
5:30 at the town hall.
5:30.
On the other end, you could change it, and then if there's a loud scream, you could have a special meeting.
Well, if you change it, there's a reason to change it. So, I mean,
I think it's a good reason. that you-
I think it's a good reason as well. I mean, a lot of people might want to attend
Yes.
that film.
Yeah.
Well, they've put a lot of work.
I'm sure they have.
And,
So,
Mm-hmm.
so the question is, do you want to have a special select board meeting just to set the date for this, for the next hearing, or do you want to do it now?
Well, it's not on the agenda.
I understand that, but it's other business, so I'm not a big favor of this, but, you know, I don't like to amend the agendas, but this is something that came up now, it didn't come up last week when the agenda was set, so. It's really up to the board how you want to handle it.
We make a motion to change the meeting, November 7th.
To when?
Today. Oh.
Do anybody have a calendar?
Yep.
I don't have my phone.
What do you want to know?
What, it's the 7th was what, a Tuesday?
Thursday.
Thursday night, so you wanna do it with, what's the,
The 14th is the town meeting.
yeah, you can't do it then.
Yeah, you can.
You can do the hearing and the town meeting at the same time?
You could after the town meeting. Town meeting probably not gonna take very long.
I don't think you wanna do that.
Okay.
Why, do we pick a Thursday for a particular reason, or that just happened to be there? I mean,
No,
Is
we're
it
doing
12th?
Thursdays for hearings.
Is it
Hmm?
12th?
We're doing Thursdays for hearings.
Hearings? So you wanna do it the following Thursday?
Next meeting will be the 5th or the 12th? Your planning commission.
What's the following Thursday? 7th, it would be,
21st.
21st.
Now you're getting into Thanksgiving.
Well, not yet.
no, Thanksgiving is the 26th, right?
Okay,
Yeah.
then you're okay at 21st.
You are in deer season now.
You're into your season.
Yeah, if you wanna do it Thursday, the next time would be the 25th, 21st.
21st.
Is that okay with you, Kathy, to put that in your motion?
What's the date again? The
November
20th.
21st.
To have,
Ooh, wait a minute.
that's too late.
I don't think
I
I'm
was
here.
just-
I'm
Could
not,
we get it closer to the 7th, but not on the 7th?
I'm not here.
Exactly.
About the 6th, it's a Wednesday.
No, I'm not here on the 21st. My birthday is the 20th and I'm going away.
Oh dear. Yeah. Well, that.
But we don't have to do it on a Thursday if you wanna choose
Still
an
have the
alternative
same
date.
week,
Yeah.
but not that same day.
How about on the sixth?
Yeah,
Tuesday
move it
or
up to the
Wednesday?
6th.
That's fine.
Yeah, that makes more.
Move it up to the
That makes
6th.
more sense,
Right.
because people are here to
Good
go.
reason
Okay.
you're here.
It's a good thing.
All right, so Kathy, you wanna make the motion on November 6th? Is that okay with you?
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay. We had enough discussion, so I don't think we need any more. Is all in favor of moving the hearing from the 7th to the 6th of November? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Okay. So it's November 6th, Bill.
Okay, thanks.
And can we could put that on the website and put a note, maybe put a,
I'll send it to those 80 people that.
right, yeah, and also put a notice too on the town hall or something too.
Let Wendy know.
No?
Will there be another Grafton News out before
There'll
that?
be a.
Yes, there will be.
Yeah.
The deadline's October 24th.
Do we have any other business?
No.
No?
Yeah.
No,
Just a
I was
reminder.
gonna let you know about the abatement,
Yeah.
sorry.
No, but, okay. Go ahead, Kim.
The abatement's at Town Hall, 5:30,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
Tuesday.
So that's everyone at this table, plus the GPs.
That's my anniversary.
Are you going away?
No, I'm going to the abatement meeting at 5:30.
Anyway, so I guess we're done. So we need a motion to go into, actually, the next select board meeting is the, you don't have it on here. So what is the next meeting? The
21st?
No, the 4th. November 4th is the next select board meeting here. And so we need a motion to go into executive session? Yeah.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye? Okay. Thank you for all coming. Thank you for your attention and reports.